What's going on, everybody? It's Dave here from Profitable.Tools, and in this video, I'm going to try to take you from being a beginner or intermediate WordPress user and help you be perceived as more of an advanced user, even if you don't know how to write a single line of code using something called code snippets. Now, hang on, if you're already an advanced user and you're about to click away from this video, I've got something for you as well, because at the end of the video, I'm going to be doing a plugin deathmatch against two of the most popular plugins out there for code snippets. The newly released Code Snippets Pro, as well as WP Codebox. That's got a loyal following of hardcore users. So I'm going to help you decide which one is best for you by kind of going through and comparing the features. All right, so let's get into it. First of all, I want to get everybody on the same page. So what are code snippets? Well, you've probably already run into them before. Something like a Google tracking code or a Facebook pixel is the simplest form of a code snippet that you've already experienced, right? You grab it from one place and you just copy it somewhere on your website. It shows up on every page, and then you've got tracking set up. Now, there are a lot of other things you can do with snippets. I'm going to show you some of them in this video, but there's really four main different types. So we've got PHP snippets, HTML snippets, CSS snippets, and JavaScript snippets. They all serve different functions, and hopefully in the next 2 minutes, you're going to understand exactly what those functions are. Next, after that, I'm going to show you the free as well as premium ways to get code snippets onto your website and help you understand why you might want to pay for something that you can do for free. All right, let's get into it. Over to the screen. All right, so to get started here, I've got a demo website, and I just want to show you one example of a code snippet before we get into all of the different types. So there's this post right here. It says the best code snippet plugins of 2022. And if I go ahead and click on it, you can see that there's not actually even any content on this page. In fact, it looks pretty boring. But if we edit the post, there's actually a code snippet right in the title of the post. Now, what is this doing? It's putting in the current year. So in 2 or 3 years, this post will say the best code snippet plugins of 2023 or 2024 or 2025, so on and so forth. I don't need to do anything. So if you're working in an industry where your content doesn't really change that much, you're going to get a little bump in click-through rate just because your post title will look like it's ultra current, and anybody who sees it in search rankings will click on that before the post from 2019. So let's talk about those four different types of snippets. I've got the Code Snippets Pro plugin up here. We'll be looking at this in more detail later on, a little more objectively. For now, I just really like these tabs. It'll allow me to explain these different types of snippets very easily. So we've got PHP snippets, HTML snippets, CSS snippets, and JavaScript snippets. Now let's go through some of the differences here when you would use each type. So a PHP snippet is code that's going to be running on your server, and it will actually be rendered before it gets to your user's browser, right? So this will allow you to do things like modify the functionality of the website. So one of the examples they give here in this plugin is to disable the admin bar for everyone except administrators. If you've ever logged into a WordPress site as a user, sometimes you're browsing the website and they actually just leave the black bar up here at the top, and that can be a little bit, if you're a WordPress expert, you know what it is, but as a user, it looks kind of funny. You get into the back end sometimes and it's just all blank. So this is a nice little snippet that will allow you to disable this. Now, I'm going to show you resources for finding snippets later on. There's actually a lot of them out on the web, but for now, we're just kind of getting the idea of what these do. So PHP snippets allow you to change the functionality of your website. They're kind of like plugins, but they're not run as plugins. They're just run as little bits of code on your site. Content snippets are exactly what they sound like. They're bits of content that are being embedded on your site. And the example of that is the current year that I just showed you at the beginning of this video, where we can go ahead and modify things, make them more dynamic using snippets. Next, let's talk about CSS snippets. Now, anybody who's had a website for more than a minute has seen something on their site that they wanted to change, and they couldn't figure out how to do it with the theme settings or whatever page builder they were using. So you reach out to the plugin developer or the theme maker and you say, hey, how do I make this button do this? And then often they'll actually give you a little bit of CSS that you have to copy and paste somewhere on your website in order to get the desired visual changes. That is what CSS does. It styles your website. So when you think about wanting to make visual changes to things on your website, not functionality or not content based, that's going to be a CSS snippet. The last type of snippet we need to talk about are JavaScript snippets. Now, these are most often associated with adding extra functionality to your website. So things like the Facebook pixel, Google tracking, maybe you have a chat bot. Those things are all typically JavaScript snippets that are embedded on a page on your website. Now, just beware that users can turn off JavaScript on their browser. So there is no way to ensure that the JavaScript will always fire. But most often, those types of pixels are the ones that you want for your marketing needs so that you can kind of follow people around and provide them additional support. All right, so now that you know what the different types of code snippets are, let's go ahead and look at some ways to get them onto your website. I'm going to start off by showing you the free option because free is always good. In the dashboard, I'm going to go down to Appearance and then the Theme File Editor. Now, this is kind of the old way of doing things. It's still completely viable, but this is the only way people did things at the beginning of WordPress, and that is to actually edit the theme files themselves. So we've got the style sheet right here, the style.css, and then the theme functions file right here, the functions.php. You can go ahead and drop snippets here. They're going to load on every single page of your website, and it'll work just fine. This is a great way to do things, except there is one issue that you need to be made aware of. As soon as you update your theme, it's going to clear out all of these changes. So what you need to do is actually use a child theme. I've got one installed here. Let's go under Appearance, Themes, and I'm going to choose my Astra child theme. I'll activate this. And now that it's activated, I can still go back over to my theme file editor, and you can see that all of the other files of the theme are gone, but I've just got the style sheet and the theme functions here. There's really nothing on them. This is where I can add additional content, and then I can still update Astra or whatever theme you're using like normal, and it's not going to overwrite those changes. Kind of just gives you a separate place to put things. Now, a few years ago, WordPress decided it would be a good idea to actually just give people a spot inside of WordPress to add CSS. And so you might notice this little box up here that says, hey, there's now a built-in CSS editor. And if I click this, it's actually going to take me to something called the customizer, where I can go ahead and add in additional CSS. Just to get us oriented here, the customizer is where you do most of the editing of your main theme. And then typically there is this option right at the bottom that says additional CSS. You can just copy and paste your snippets here. And again, they will show up on every single page of your website. I want to be clear here that this only works with CSS. You don't want to put JavaScript or HTML or PHP inside of the CSS editor. So let's pause for a second and just talk a little bit about this CSS box, because let's say you're wondering, yeah, Dave, but how do I get the code to go in the box to make the website look the way I want it? I mentioned before, you can just reach out to the developer and they'll often be able to help you out, and usually for no cost as long as you're still under some kind of support plan with them. But let's say you want to take matters into your own hands. Let's go to your website, turn on developer tools inside of your browser, and then right click on anything that you want to change. So I'm going to change this button right over here. I'm going to right click, choose inspect element. By the way, if you miss and you click something else, there is this little selector tool right over here. They look the same inside of every browser, and that'll allow you to just kind of hover around the different elements on your website to see what it is that you're editing. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and change this button. So I'm going to click right here, and then over here in the style section, I'm going to just look for words that I recognize, like maybe the padding. Right now, it's quite large padding. Maybe I'll make it a little bit smaller. So I'll just simply click in here and start editing some new values. So I made all of the values 15 pixels, quite a bit smaller, and I can actually see all of the changes that I've made over here in this Changes tab. So it went down from 32 to 15, and you can see that the button looks quite a bit different. I don't actually think it looks very good, but that's not the point of this, just to show you how you can modify things to look the way you want. Now, this is not permanent. This is only on my browser, like the one I am using right now. If someone else were to visit this website, it would look the right way. So to make it permanent, we simply click and copy the rule inside of Safari here. It's very similar in any browser. So basically, you want to get this text into this box. So I'm going to paste it in right here. Now, I'm going to make sure not to add duplicates of things. So really, I don't need any of this color information unless I wanted to change the color, then I could do that as well. And then what I did change was the padding, right? So I'm just going to delete all of the other entries there. So we have the padding option on, making sure to leave the brackets, the open and close brackets there. We'll go ahead and publish things. And then back over to my page, if I reload, it should actually stay the same. And we can see that it's working here by turning this off. We'll delete that, reload, and now it's back to big. So we are actually affecting the look of the page with that little change. So to recap here, the first option is just to modify your theme files directly, but we need to use a child theme so we don't overwrite the files each time we update our theme. You can also add the CSS right inside of the customizer. That's a really good option if you only need to make CSS changes. But a long time ago, about 10 years ago, a free plugin came out called Code Snippets that kind of changed the way things were done inside of WordPress for a lot of developers. It was kind of the point where a lot of people stopped using child themes. So here it is. This is Code Snippets. It's totally free, continues to be free to this day. It's got over 600,000 active installations, and it's not the only one out there. There's definitely a lot of different code snippets or header footer code managers and things like that, but this is the most trusted one. It's been out for so long. It's on 600,000 websites. It's really kind of beloved inside of the hardcore WordPress user community. So let's go ahead and look at some of the features of this free version of Code Snippets to see if it's a better option than anything else we've talked about so far. All right, so this is the user interface of Code Snippets. We looked at the Pro version a little bit earlier on in this video. This is what the free one looks like. You can see it's very, very similar. We're just missing a couple of tabs at the top. So we've got functions, PHP, and the content section here where we can actually go ahead and create shortcodes to embed things into our site. If we look at what I've already done with this website with that year in the title of the post, well, that actually took a code snippet itself in order to allow that, because that's not a default WordPress function. It might actually interfere with some SEO plugins, so I'm not sure I recommend that tactic, but just as an example, it's a fun one to look at. But back to what we're doing over here. So I've got this little bit of code that adds the ability to use shortcodes in the title, and I just simply searched on the web how to do this. So here it is. I Googled how to add shortcodes in title WordPress, and right away I see this add filter, title, do shortcode, right? So I can click into here and I'll get a little bit of code that I can add. Now, of course, use some good common sense. Don't just grab random bits of code from anywhere on the web. I didn't actually use this bit of code. I didn't find this website in my initial search, but you get the point here. There's lots of places that you can find developers who are just sharing the answers. So once I had the ability to add shortcodes in the title, the next step was, of course, to add the current year. And for this, I wanted to create a shortcode. So a shortcode is a WordPress fundamental, a little block of code that we can just copy and paste anywhere on the website, and it should render, with those few exceptions like not in titles, it should render what the code results as rather than actually seeing the code. So right now it's just going to run this little block of code that asks the server, hey, what year is it? It's going to spit it back out into plain text. So let's take a look at this as an example. I'll just copy this shortcode. I'll go into post, add new. And I'm going to go ahead and look for the shortcode block. I'll paste it in here. And if we preview this page, you're going to see inside of the body of the post right here, it just says the year. So I think for most people, using the free version of Code Snippets along with adding some CSS inside of their customizer is going to be a really good solution. But one thing we have not really talked about is adding JavaScript. And to this point, there's not been a great way to do that, because any JavaScript we add is just going to get injected onto every single page of our website. And we haven't really found a way to specialize. So maybe it only shows up on certain checkout pages, or maybe when people are browsing, they get a certain chat widget that pops up, right? So there's got to be a better way to do this. And in fact, there are. However, there are premium options. Let's start off with the premium options that you've already paid for and are likely using that just have these options embedded somewhere in them. Starting with your theme. Now I'm using the Astra theme on this website, but just about every major popular theme like GeneratePress and Cadence, they're all going to have different options for doing this. So let's go under Appearance and Astra options. They have this really great option called Custom Layouts. It might be called something a little different depending on what theme you're using. But if I go into the settings for custom layouts, I can go ahead and add hooks so I can inject JavaScript to specific pages at specific points. So let's go ahead and try this out. I'm going to go ahead and add a new custom layout, and it gives me a little tutorial here. I'm going to skip. I'm going to go to the code editor here where I could paste in my snippet. Let's say it was my code here. And then I'm going to choose where I want it to go. And for me, I'd like to choose the hooks option when I'm doing things like tracking codes or maybe adding a chat widget, so that I can add it maybe to the very bottom. I can scroll down here and choose exactly where on the page I want it to load. Let's say maybe the top of the footer, right? So that's going to help my page speed scores because the JavaScript won't load right away. The site becomes usable faster. Then you have a ton of other options like restricting it to a specific user role, like maybe someone who's logged in, or maybe you want to show it only on desktop but not on mobile. You can go ahead and configure that as well. I like this time duration feature too, where you can set it to show up only during a certain time of day. Now, obviously, this is not only going to work for JavaScript, it just happens to be where I like to insert JavaScript, but maybe you have a banner that you want to show up at the bottom of every blog post, but you could add some page content here, and then inside of custom layouts, have it show up only on a certain category even of blog post, and it would be able to handle that. Another option for injecting code is going to be in your page builder. I'm using Elementor right now, and you can go into custom code, and you can see that we have a whole custom code section in Elementor where you can choose the location of the code. We don't have as many options here as we do with Astra, either the head, the start of the body, or the end of the body, and then you can simply just add in the code. So that is a nice handy thing. I'm glad it exists, but it is not nearly as flexible as Astra's custom layouts. Now, there is a potentially catastrophic result of just about everything I've mentioned in this video so far, with the exception of the free code snippets plugin, in that if you were to change your theme to a different theme, let's say you migrated from Astra over to Cadence or something like that, all of your settings in Astra are now gone. Or let's say you change page builders, you're no longer using Elementor, you switch over to Oxygen. Well, again, all of the code snippets that you've added are gone. I have even had it so that when I updated a theme, it cleared out the CSS inside of the customizer. I know that sounds crazy. It only happened to me once, but it happened and it made me scared. So I had to go back into a staging site where all the copy was thankfully still there, and then paste it back into the customizer, saving my butt because there was a lot of CSS in there. So it is my opinion that the best practice for tracking codes is not to go inside of your theme, it's not to go inside of the customizer, and it's not to go inside of your page builder, but it's actually best to have a standalone plugin that can contain all of these things. So that way you can change anything on your website freely without affecting any of these codes. Because honestly, some of them are very, very important to your bottom line. Things like reporting to Facebook, right? That can change your ad spend drastically if you're not getting accurate reporting, or even your analytics back to Google. Again, you could be doing Google ads or tracking your analytics to see how your SEO campaigns are going. That can drastically change the course of your business if that information is wrong. So that's why I've been looking at two premium plugins, the newly released Code Snippets Pro and the slightly less new, but still pretty new, WP Codebox. So here is the website for Code Snippets Pro, and I'll be honest with you, when I heard they had a pro version, I went ahead and bought it right away. Kind of a reciprocity in action type of situation where I've been using this software for so long, I was like, why wouldn't I buy it? So we'll talk more about why you wouldn't buy it and why you would buy it in a moment, but I just want to point out that they currently have some introductory pricing. So if you're watching this video right as it's released, they do have a sale because it's a brand new plugin. Even though the original one has been out for over a decade, they're now finally trying to make some money off of it, which, wanted to support them and go ahead and buy that plugin. The other option to consider is WP Codebox, which is very, very similar to Code Snippets Pro, although there are some features included in WP Codebox which might push you over the edge and make you consider this over supporting the longtime favorite of Code Snippets Pro. Adding JavaScript is very, very basic here. We can go ahead and add new. You simply add the script in, choose whether you want it to load at the end of the body or the top of the head, and then you can give it a description here and tag it just for your organization. And that's essentially it. There's not the customization options that you see inside of Astra. And let's see how that looks inside of Codebox. I can go ahead and load in a snippet here. Let's say I'm going to do a JavaScript snippet, and I can choose where I want it to load in the header or the footer. But what I like here is that I can choose where it runs. I can choose custom, open the condition builder here, and add it only to either a specific page or a post type. You get the idea, so we can customize things a lot like we saw inside of the Astra options. Working backwards over to the Styles tab here, you can see that if we add a new snippet, it's very basic, similar to what we saw inside of the JavaScript options. We can choose whether this shows up on the front end, so for visitors of our website, or whether it affects administrators. So if you want to give a custom look to the back end, you have that option. Then again, just some organization options where you can describe what the change is and then add some tags here. Comparing that to what WP Codebox offers, you're going to see a lot more advanced power user functionality. So I can go into type here, and then we've got multiple options. We can do CSS, where we're actually writing the CSS, choosing whether it's going to render to inline or to an external file. And then you can also do external CSS. So if you've got some CSS hosted elsewhere, you can simply point the CSS file right here. You add the URL, and it'll pull that in. There's also support for Sassy CSS or SCSS. If you want to add that to your website, this is a good option for it. And then just in terms of where it's being loaded, we can choose the header or the footer, just like on code snippets. But again, we have the ability to choose exactly what pages the CSS is going to load on. This is actually very important because maybe you just want to change something on a particular post type. Then you can do that there, and it doesn't load the code everywhere on your website. Moving backwards again inside of Code Snippets Pro to the Content tab, this is very similar to what we saw earlier in the free version, although things are done a little bit differently. You can see they've removed the option to have a shortcode, which I find a little bit odd. I would like to see that return. I'm not sure if that was an oversight or maybe just they haven't gotten there yet. I really like to see that shortcode. So you might be wondering, well, if there's no shortcode, how do you use these things? Well, you use either a Gutenberg block or an Elementor element. Let's go ahead and look at how this works. So here I am editing a post, and if I wanted to add in a content snippet, what I need to do is add a new block. I'll type in snippet, and here I've got the option to either add the source code of the snippet if I wanted to share it, or I could add a content snippet right here. It's going to give me a list of all of the current snippets that I've got on my site. I'll choose this one, and then what I want to do is actually have it run the PHP code, and then it's going to show up right there. Now, the problem I see with this is I might want to embed it into content, right? So like I did before with the title, or maybe I want to add it somewhere else on the page. That makes it a lot harder to do it if I have to use a block. Now I'm editing a page inside of Elementor, and I want to add in a snippet from Code Snippets Pro. They make it pretty easy here with their snippets widget. Again, we have the option to show the source code or to actually drop in a content widget. I'm just going to go ahead and load it in here at the top of the page. I would go ahead and select the widget that I want to display. Now it is not letting me select the current year, and I suspect this is a little bit of a bug where I need to actually have more than one for it to show up. Now this snippet is not going to load until I can actually select it. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back out to my dashboard and see if I can duplicate it, add a second content snippet, and see if that solves that selector problem. I've actually seen that in other plugins before. That's why I have this hypothesis that it's going to work. Going over to snippets, I'm just going to hit this clone button here. And now you can see I've got a second one down here. If we head back over to our page inside of Elementor, I was just working on this home page. Now I'm going to try to select the snippet. I can choose that one. I can choose this one. And it in fact is working. We have the same processing option, so you do need to turn on the PHP code since most of your snippets are likely to involve some code that lets the code run inside of the snippet. Then we can do things like adding formatting as well as running shortcodes inside of your code snippets. So you could have certain snippets run other snippets. Now, once again here, I'd love to have some options to place this inside of some text. Even the option to say click on it and having before and after text, I think would be really nice. Of course, you could go into the actual snippet and add the text there, but it's just nicer to do it when you're designing your page, and you can see how it would flow with the page. Now, the exact functionality that we just saw in Code Snippets Pro, it's not directly reproducible inside of WP Codebox. There's no Elementor element, there's no Gutenberg block, but you can use shortcodes. Let's show you how to do it. Now, this is a little bit less intuitive than what we saw in the free version of Code Snippets. So let me just walk you through this. I'm going to go ahead and create that year snippet again. And instead of going ahead and pasting in the code right away, what I'm going to do is hit generate right up here. And I'm going to do a short code generator. I'll give it a name like current year and hit generate. Now, right here where it says your code, you're going to want to paste in your snippet, but you have to be careful because we've already opened up the PHP statement here. So let's go ahead and remove that. And then we haven't closed it. So we need to make sure that we close it, grabbing this and add it to line 10. So you need to know a little bit of code here, just a little bit more technical. And as long as I go ahead and save here, turn the snippet on, I should be able to use that shortcode anywhere on my website and it'll work great. Testing this out over in Elementor, although you could certainly do it in any page builder or even Gutenberg. I've got the shortcode current year, and you can see it is rendering right inside of the browser here to 2022. And of course, if I go to the home page, it should load there as well. I actually prefer having the shortcode over the discrete elements in Gutenberg or Elementor because then I can use it anywhere I want right inside of my text. I don't have to have a line break or worry about any sort of weird formatting issues. So I know a lot of people like having a little drop-down menu, choose the one they want. And in some situations, that's going to work great. Kind of just depends on what your needs are. I do think it's cool how you can name the shortcode anything that you want. I'd like to see maybe a little copy button or something just to make it easier, but you can make it literally something you can remember, like current_year. Super easy to just be able to then put that anywhere on any page on your website. And if you're managing a lot of websites, you can use that shortcode across all of them via their cloud snippets. So if I wanted to add this to my cloud snippets, I just clicked on it and you can see it's copied here. Now, any site that I log into, I'm going to be able to pull that snippet down and then begin using it right away. There is an option right here to upload to the cloud. And if you're looking at a snippet that's on the cloud, you can download from the cloud as well. And you might have noticed that download is available right here. So if you make any changes to the cloud version, you can kind of resync them up with that option. All right, let's talk about the design, the look, the layout of these plugins. Which one do you prefer? For me, I actually really prefer the Code Snippets Pro plugin because that looks more like WordPress. Like if WordPress were to build this functionality in, like they probably should, it would look like this, right? And that makes me feel at home. It's very comfortable and I know exactly where to go. WP Codebox is fine. It's just a little bit more confusing. It's got a lot of different columns here. I don't feel like it uses the screen as well as it might. Now, I should mention in settings, it does give you some customizational options so I can split things apart. I actually like how this looks a little bit better. However, I'm going to leave it on the stock layout just for this video so that everyone can see kind of what they'll see when they open up the plugin. It's very clear that this plugin was designed by developers for developers. There's a lot of functionality that you might not need, but they included anyways, like different themes so that you can have the right color scheme for your code if you prefer something else. We do have a dark mode option. I like that. And then there's folders, right? We can lay things out into folders. So I can do things like content snippets, and then just drag and drop my snippets into the folders. A little bit wonky with the drag and dropping here in Safari, but it does work. There's an option over here to show the toggle switch so you can see at a glance which snippets are on. I think that's really smart and effective. And obviously when something is uploaded to the cloud, you get a little cloud icon over here to represent the fact that it's been uploaded. Back over to Code Snippets Pro, there is no cloud functionality right now, which is a real bummer. However, there is the ability to import and export snippets if you need to move it between a few sites. That would definitely be a lot more work than just simply connecting it up to your account and then having it automatically show up in your dashboard. Before we talk about the offers and comparing the pricing and all of that goodness, I want to go over the repository inside of WP Codebox. The repository is super awesome. This is basically a list of all of the different snippets that you can grab instantaneously. They've been vetted, you know they're good. So if I want to add my Facebook pixel, I can go ahead and grab this. It's got a little chunk of text that I can just paste things in, download the snippet, and boom, it's right there inside of my WP Codebox interface. You'll find options for things like WooCommerce, security settings, maintenance. Just really, really cool that they did this. I hope they continue to build it out and offer more and more snippets. All right, next let's talk about the offer. Now I do have links for all these plugins down below. This is the time of the day where I pitch the affiliate links. If you want to support this channel, if this video has been helpful to you, go ahead and click those links down below before you buy. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It just helps me to make more videos like this one. But we've still got a lot to talk about because there's actually a decent amount going on with this offer here. So Code Snippets is using some software called Freemius. I'll pull up their website right now. Freemius is a piece of software that makes it easy for developers to sell their plugins. Now, what this will do for them is collect taxes, handle updates, do all of the licensing, things like that. So as a developer, it kind of takes a lot of the business stuff off of your hands, makes life a lot easier. However, as a user, there's a lot of people who object to Freemius. Now, I don't have a real clear position on this one way or the other, but I'm going to lay out the facts as I know them to be true. So as a user, what Freemius does is it gives you one place to log in and see all of the activations for different plugins that use Freemius as their licensing model. This is actually quite nice. If you have a client that leaves, you want to deactivate their plugins, you can do that from one dashboard inside of Freemius. So that's pretty cool. But there's some negatives to it that some security people are kind of, concerned about. So much so that Freemius went ahead and put together a page to address whether or not they're spying on you as a user. Now, they are very adamant about the fact that they are not spying on you and have explanations for all of the things that they do. However, it does not appease everybody out there. So I'm just going to lay it out there as I understand it. There is the option to opt out of their data tracking. So back over in my WordPress dashboard, here is my Freemius plugin. I can opt out. That's going to block automatic updates, and it's got this kind of confusing option right here where it says plugin and themes tracking. I can turn this way or this way. I'm not really sure what's happening, whether this is off. This looks like it's off, and then I have to opt out, or if I can just have this off. You get the point. It's very confusing as to what's going on. They admit they're tracking what plugins and themes you're using. Why? We don't really know. I'm not sure what the clear explanation for that is. So you can opt out. I'm not really sure what button to click here. It's not as transparent as I'd like to see. If I opt out of my automatic updates, of course I can still update the plugin, but I just have to do it manually. WP Codebox, on the other hand, is doing everything with WooCommerce. So all of the licensing is handled via WooCommerce. It's straight WordPress. You're basically just interacting with the WP Codebox company itself. There's no middleman, no Freemius getting in the way. Now, the folks at Snippets Pro should be commended because they're not being confrontational about this whole Freemius thing. In fact, they started a very long thread here in their Code Snippets community about Freemius. They're very much open to changing if there's enough concern, but it's not clear whether or not that'll happen at this point. Now, as far as the actual pricing goes, I don't usually like to get into the specifics in these videos anymore because it just changes so often that the video becomes obsolete and people get angry when they don't see the price that they're expecting to see. However, I do want to point out that WP Codebox seems to be open to the idea of lifetime deals kind of perpetually. So if you're the type of person that likes lifetime deals, you want to pay for software once, then that's probably the place you want to end up. And honestly, that's probably where I'm going to go. All the features that I showed you today kind of lead me towards a WP Codebox. Code Snippets Pro does have some early pricing going on right now because it's a brand new plugin. So for the next 10 days or so, you'll be able to take advantage of those lower prices as well as a one-time lifetime deal. So Code Snippets Pro, I mean, just reciprocity. They've been using their plugin for so long. If you want to throw them some money, this is your opportunity. So I hope you feel like a little bit more of a code expert when it comes to inserting things onto your WordPress website. We've covered just about all of the different options out there. If you have any questions or comments, leave me a link down below. If you want to help support the channel, really the best thing you can do is just click the affiliate links before you make a purchase. They're greatly appreciated and helps me make more videos like this one. That's about it. Make sure you check out the Facebook group, and I'll see you in the next video.